Hey everyone, today is going to be the first video of a series I'm going to do of a slew of videos. And basically, it's going to be books I got for Christmas, what I showed before, but I'm going to go deep in them. So, the first video I'm going to do is Beatnik Fascism by Brandon Adamson. That's what he looks like. Yep. So, this is a pretty interesting book. But before I get into a review and why I actually like this book, actually love this book, not I actually love this book, is let me tell you where I was at the time. I consider myself to be a modern day beatnik, and I know that sounds goofy, but it's just who I am. You know, I'm retro. I got a turtleneck right now, but here's the thing. I always found the beatnik culture interesting, you know, and I really do like what they're saying for. However, I have noticed something last year. Allen Ginsberg, probably one of my favorite poets of all time, was a creep, you know. And also, a lot of these beat generation guys use a lot of racial terms, and also, even though a lot of them were gay themselves, use a lot of gay stereotypes in their books. So, it kind of got me to think, is beatnik culture a little too edgy for today's youth? And I was thinking about this because, you know, after doing all this research, first off, I understand now that human beings, doesn't matter how relevant they are, they're flawed. All human beings are flawed. So when I came across this interesting book, and I watched the interview of this guy, I thought to myself, this is interesting. So I watched the interview, and I know I had to get the book. Basically, the reason why he wrote this book is because he was watching episodes of The Twilight Zone. And basically, he asked his friend what was the worst episode of The Twilight Zone. And his friend said, well, the one with the beatniks. And he said, no, that was a good episode. And basically, what happened, he got to thinking about beatnik and fascism. And basically, he wrote this book because he wanted to kind of compare what was going on in the beat generation to what's going on now with alt culture. Now, he even said it himself. When we think of alt culture, we mostly think of like alt-right, right? Like alt-right. But hardly or not, we never think of alt-left too. It's both different sides of both extremes, basically. So, this is really interesting, and it kind of goes into the horrors of, you know, alt culture, and basically what it really means, and also a little horror about even nostalgia, you know, and here's the thing, I know I am basically nostalgic. I mean, I'm not trying to be a hypocrite, but yeah, it is kind of wild, people. The best way to compare this book, it's kind of like if Jack Kerouac wrote like a self-conscious book about himself. That is one way to explain it. And also, the book is just so freaking smart. I mean, I hate to make it sound pretentious like that, and I'm really not, because it's a really great book, but it is smart, really smart, and it does kind of show at where times are heading, really, you know, and I think the best thing about this book, too, is it keeps with the spirit of the beatniks, and it's not afraid to go goofy, but at the same time, it has, like, something's wrong with it, you know what I mean? Which, it again does keep up with the spirit of the beatniks. But it really does, and I think the best thing also about this book is just the way it sent itself. I mean, look at this thing. It looks like it could came out back then, and I give it a 10 out of 10. It's a great book. If I can find that interview, I will link that interview for you to watch it, but I think, another thing I think about is interesting, if you remember, I don't know if they still do this anymore, because to be honest, I kind of don't pay attention to politics like I used to, but they used to try to make, so they used to try to say, conservatism is the new counterculture, right? It's the new punk rock, or you can even say the new beatnik, or whatever, the new hippie. And it kind of goes into what that really means, because once we take apart something what was livable, you know what I mean, in nature, but try to put your own spin on it to make it kind of look like it can be conservative. And I'm not trying to say all conservatives are bad, actually, because I know some conservatives that I would even say, even though I disagree with a lot of them are pretty nice people, but I think once you make and I figured this out, once you try to make any political ideology your identity, it gets to you, man. So yeah, I give it 10 out of 10. It's an interesting video. It goes into alt-right, alt-left, and culture, and using the past as the means to look at the future. You know how much I like that. So give it a read if you can.